Hello everyone, and welcome to another Wild Edibles episode, where today we're going to talk about a plant that needs no introduction. You probably already knew it was edible, and that's the dandelion. Now, this is pretty much common knowledge at this point, so I partly didn't even want to do this episode, but there's something I wanted to get into in a little bit. But, just to recap, dandelion leaves, edible, raw or cooked, and the root makes a decent substitute for coffee. But as for identification, well, it's not as simple as me telling you to just look for these, I suppose, barbed arrow-shaped leaves, because unfortunately, dandelion leaves are highly variable. They don't always look like this. And in the situations you're most likely to need a wild edible like dandelion, they're not going to look like this at all. Now, in open fields, most of the dandelions will often look like this, which is the stereotypical thing you probably think of when you see a dandelion. But in terms of survival, in open fields, food tends to be pretty plentiful, and it can be a little hard to get lost in an open field and pretty easy to get found that way too, if you're in an area that has helicopters that would be looking for you. However, in dense forests, where it's considerably easier to get lost, harder to get found, and food is a lot more scarce, there are still dandelions. It's a very tenacious species, but they don't look like this at all. They look like this, almost invariably. For those of you who understand natural selection, this makes perfect sense. There's variation in the species, and the one that's most adept on average to survive in an environment will do the best. As of right now, these two are the same species, but this one, with its leaves with greater surface area, is going to do far better in a lower light environment than this one that has this barbed leaf pattern. Eventually, these two types might diverge into different species if they're sufficiently isolated, but that takes quite a lot of time. But we're getting a little off track. In terms of wild edibles, this is going to be the one that'll probably help you out the most. But how do you tell that it's a dandelion when you're so used to seeing these? Well, there are still some carryover features that connect the two. First of all, this does have the same type of flower when it does flower. I've noticed these tend to flower less often because, well, there's not a lot of energy to go around down here on the forest floor. But it does happen, and when you see them, you'll be able to quickly identify this as a dandelion. Second, and most important, when the flower is not present, you'll notice that the dandelion leaf extends all the way down to the base. There's still leaf there on the stem, and the same holds true for these wood-growing plants. You'll see it's less pronounced, but there is still leaf clinging to that stem there, especially on the larger leaves. Now, this variant of dandelion is a lot less easy to identify. It's not as unique as this variant, but these are still pretty unique. They have a sort of toothed teardrop type shape to them, and with all the other stuff that I've said previously, you should be able to notice these pretty quickly. But anyway, that's just about all I have for today. Hope you guys learned something and enjoyed. See ya.